Chief Coleman, would you come forward? And the Fire Marshal, would you care to join us up here at the table, please? Good evening, Chief.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Before I begin, I'd like to introduce Peter Ostrowski. He's our state fire marshal. And when I conclude my statements, the marshal has some words relative to Chief Belhumeur as well. This past Sunday, as the manager had mentioned, has really been a horrible time for the town of Auburn, and specifically for the fire department. We've suffered a tremendous loss with the loss of Chief Belhumeur. For all who know him, you knew his passion and his dedication that he had not only for this community, but for the fire department. And it is largely because of him and his leadership that our organization is where we are today. And he can be credited for that. Chief Belhumeur began his career in the Auburn Fire Department in 1966. And he was appointed the town's first full-time firefighter on April 17th, 1978. He was, again, the only full-time person at that time, and he was hired as the fire inspector. And what makes that historic in many ways is that there are many communities in the Commonwealth, especially here in central Massachusetts, that did not have a full-time fire inspector. Auburn was the first in this area. And that's historic in the sense that it shows the importance that this community had on fire prevention and battling the fire problem very early on. And we were leaders in that area. Just before Chief Belhumeur's passing, about a week before Chief Belhumeur's passing, I had the opportunity to bring home his personnel folder and to go through it and just to see what was in there. And I've shared with many people that it was a bit of a history lesson going through that folder, and it was about this thick. And I joked with him right before he passed. I said, I brought your folder home and I looked through it and I said, how much discipline did you have in there? You know? and he joked, he got a kick out of that. But it was a bit of a history lesson, because as I flipped through there, especially looking at the stuff in the late 70s, early 80s, what I started to notice was there was a lot of correspondence from other municipalities. There was letters in there from the Dudley Charlton School District. There were letters in there from the Oxford School District. The Brookfields, many of the Brookfields, letters from local fire chiefs of those communities from across District 7. And the theme of those letters were all the same, thanking Chief Belhumeur, whether it was from a school superintendent or whether it was from a fire chief, thanking Chief Belhumeur for being essentially a professional consultant on issues that they were having in their community relative to either fire problems or code-related issues. And Chief Belhumeur in those early days went to many of those communities and not only taught the teachers and the educators and the fire chiefs of those communities what, you know, the problem that they were dealing with, because they did not have those services. They did not have fire inspectors. They were not up on the codes like Chief Belhumeur was. So he was a tremendous asset to this fire district in the early years, really building what today is a robust system of fire inspectors. And most communities in this district now have full-time fire inspectors. But we were the first. Chief Belhumeur was appointed a lieutenant in 1982, and he was appointed the town's first full-time fire chief on January 1st, 1986. And again, somewhat of a historic event, because most of the communities around here did not have a full-time fire chief either. And in that time, he served as a leader and as a mentor to many of the call chiefs in the area that were not doing it on a full-time basis, that did not have the opportunity to sort of have the knowledge base that he had relative to the codes. And he became a mentor to a lot of people. Chief Belhumeur retired in 2002, January 31st of 2002, concluding a 36-year career with this department, and this is the only fire department that he worked with in that 36-year career. And to call him a leader is a bit of an understatement, because when we track the list of firsts for this organization and what he brought to this community, the list is endless. Whether you are talking about, again, going back to full-time firefighter, first full-time firefighter, first full-time inspector, first full-time chief, first and still one of the only departments in this area to have its own training facility. Chief Belhumeur brought that to this community. We had a residential live-in program from the WPI students where they lived in the West Auburn Fire Station, and he did that as an opportunity because he truly believed in fire prevention. He truly believed in the engineering aspect, that with engineering, we could conquer the fire problem and we could make buildings safer. And that was a passion project to him, where he wanted those fire engineering students to have an opportunity to get some real-life experience when they were in school. I could sit here for the next hour and go on with the firsts from Chief Belhumeur. He was a true friend. He was a mentor of mine. I've known him the entire 26 years that I've been involved in the fire service. And at one time, serving as a fire inspector, Chief Belhumeur was often on the other end of a phone call that I made for him to research a code issue or a code problem. One of the other things that I did not mention is that, and I'll close with this just relative to his work in fire prevention. Chief Belhumeur served as the president of the Fire Prevention Association of Massachusetts in 1986, and he was one of the founding members of that organization. And in the late 70s, early 80s, Chief Belhumeur sat on many of the technical committees that wrote today's fire code. And as you're all aware, last year, we had an opportunity to pass a new set of bylaws in the community. And as I was reviewing the bylaws, again, a little bit of a history lesson for myself, there were 11 or 12 bylaws that I pushed aside and did not go before town meeting to renew those bylaws. And the reason is that those 12 bylaws that we had in the late 70s, early 80s are now fire code. In many respects, national fire code. And when you look at the dates on our bylaw and when that fire code was implemented, we had the bylaw first. And again, that was a sign of Chief Belhumeur's ingenuity and leadership, that sitting on these technical committees, as a panel of people debated what was the right thing to do to conquer the fire problem, Chief Belhumeur came back to the community and figured out his own way to enact the legislation to make Auburn a safer community. And we had many laws that are now fire code 4, in some case 5 years prior to when they were actually on the books as a state law. And that was because of his vision. And a great example of that is sprinkler systems. Chief Belhumeur, and I've told this story before, Chief Belhumeur, when the woods and the lodge at Eddy Pond were built, had battle upon battle with the contractors of that project because they did not want to put a sprinkler system in that building. And he ultimately won. And several years later, in 2005, we had a fire that struck that building. It started on the outside of the building. It got up into the attic, into the eaves, and the sprinkler system is what essentially put that fire out. And there was not one loss of life or one injury in a building that housed 100 elderly residents. And it was because the sprinkler system put that fire out. And if it wasn't for the leadership of Chief Belhumeur and him being a visionary, and if he had just rolled over and not fought that fight, we may be sitting here today with a different outcome of that incident. He will be missed by not only me, but he will be missed by the entire Auburn Fire Department. He was a true leader. He was a true friend. And I will miss him. At this point, I would like to ask State Fire Marshal Ostrowski to say a few words.
Thank you, Chief. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Town Manager Jacobson, ladies and gentlemen, I appreciate the time that you're giving me to be here to offer my condolences to the family and friends of Chief Belhumeur, to the town of Auburn, to his extended family in the fire service. Roger was a great leader, and a great leader in a variety of ways, certainly in training better firefighters, protecting the community by preventing fires, and helping fire departments to be better prepared to provide responses to those incidents that do occur. I first met Roger as a young firefighter. Over the years, he's mentored so many young firefighters, whether in Auburn or, like me, in other communities. The special program that he set up with WPI, where students learn to be firefighters and assist the Auburn Fire Department, is not only a great teaching program, but it's an example of a smart chief figuring out how to do more with less. As the fire chief in Uxbridge, I benefited greatly from his work and so much advice, as the chief said, as he mentored those of us that were coming along, but certainly experienced great benefits from his work in the Fire District 7. 26 communities in southern Worcester County that Chief Belhumeur worked with other stakeholders to really rejuvenate as a working organization in the areas of mutual aid. Mutual aid planning. There was a lot of great work done after Roger and others worked together to get District 7 as an organization back to where it should be. A lot of great work about mutual aid response that we all benefit from to this day. We're very fortunate to have that. District 7 provides training, mutual aid, and communications among the 26 departments in the region. And I pilfered from the chief's notes and noticed that it says Roger retired on December 31st, 2002. Well, I have to say that's a little bit of a misnomer, because as we all know about Roger Belhumeur, he never retired. He might have stopped getting his regular check from the town of Auburn, but he worked feverishly and with great dedication, commitment, and immeasurable effort on behalf of the fire service, on behalf of the fire district, and always, always, always for the town of Auburn. I recognize that he was the first full-time firefighter in Auburn, hired as the fire inspector, and I can tell you that I know firsthand from my own experience as being a member of the Fire Prevention Association, Roger's hard work on the code committees, and a great deal of work that he committed to the Commonwealth, making our fire code better at every turn. Now, I'm sure this board knows well firsthand that Roger never really backed down when he was going to make a point. And I can tell you that there are many points in the fire code across that's in force in the Commonwealth that were thanks to his determination, his cajoling, his hard work to further that particular code provision because of his commitment. And as the chief mentioned, he found a way to implement it in Auburn first, but we were able to benefit from his wisdom, his knowledge, and his capabilities, and it's made the Commonwealth that much safer as well. As a founding member of the Fire Prevention Association, I can tell you as one of my first jobs in the fire service, a fire inspector, he welcomed me into the Fire Prevention Association of Massachusetts, and he was a strong supporter of that organization from its inception. And I know that, again, the Fire Prevention Association of Massachusetts is certainly indebted to Chief Belhumeur, and we are all indebted to the town of Auburn for the support that you gave him. We're all indebted to Roger's family for sharing him with us, and the benefits will go on for years and years to come. I know that. We've been very fortunate to have the support of Roger, and again, I thank you for the opportunity to extend my condolences, the condolences of the Department of Fire Services on the loss of these two dedicated public servants, and Auburn's hurting right now, but know that we support you as well in this very difficult time. Thank you.
Thank you. Have any board members got anything to say? Okay.
Mr. Chairman?
Not,
Yeah, if I could, just one more thing. I would like to recognize, there's a couple of chiefs from the fire district that have come out as a show of support for Chief Belhumeur. I'd like to introduce Chief Matt Belcito from the Sutton Fire Department is here. Chief Kent Vincent from the Douglas Fire Department is here. And I would like to support, also acknowledge members, not only of my command staff, but other members of the Fire Rescue Department that are here as well as a show of support for Chief Belhumeur.
welcome.
I just also want to mention the calling hours for Chief Belhumeur. The wake will be held on this Thursday, the 26th, from 4 to 8 at Britton Wallace here on Central Street. And the funeral will be on Friday, the 27th at 10 a.m. at North American Mariners. Again, Mr. Chairman and the board, I thank you for your time.
Okay. Ms. Jacobson, if you would,
Thank you,
before
yeah.
go.
If I could add while you're here, there will be a community candlelight vigil that will be held in honor and in memory of both retired Fire Chief Belhumeur and Officer Tarantino. It's being put on by the residents and the members of the community, and we support them 100%. We're helping to get the word out for them. It will be held this Wednesday evening, May 25th at 7:30 p.m. at Lumansky Park. And again, it's an opportunity for members of the community to come together, help each other, give support, and recognize and acknowledge two tremendous public servants. Also, I would like to mention the arrangements as well that have been submitted for the public, and I was asked by the police chief to share these as well for Officer Ron Tarantino. The wake will be on Thursday evening, May 25th, from 2 in the afternoon to 7 p.m. in the evening at St. Joseph's Church in Charlton. The address is 10H Putnam Road Extension. So again, the wake is at St. Joseph's Church in Charlton from 2 to 7 p.m. on Thursday, May 25th. The funeral is on Friday, May 26th at 11 a.m., also at St. Joseph's Church. And lastly, I do want to just announce that there is a memorial fund that the police officers have established for Officer Ron Tarantino's family, and any donations can be made to the Officer Ron Tarantino Memorial Fund, care of Savers Bank on Auburn Street in Auburn. Thank you.
Mrs. Goodrich.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And, you acknowledged the board just a minute ago, and it's not that the board doesn't have anything to say. It's just that there are no words to express the sadness that we feel for the loss of these two individuals.
Thank you. And in their memory, can we all stand for a moment of silence for these two great individuals for our community? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Fire Marshal, for coming in tonight, and thank all of you for coming in here tonight. I appreciate all of you.
Mr. Chairman, can I make a motion to have a very brief recess so we can thank our public officials here?
And is there a second? Second. All those in favor? Aye. We're in recess.
Thank you, Mr. Vassalio.